Thank you, Honourable Member. As many? The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Fort Charlotte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to once again stand to represent the proud people of the great constituency of Fort Charlotte. To speak on these two bills, the Tariff Amendment Bill and the Excise Amendment Bill 2014, and to stand in support of the government's mid-year budget presentation. Mr. Speaker, before I move into issues pertaining to economics and finance of our country, I wish to speak to a matter in relation to the constituency which I represent, Fort Charlotte, a constituency that is also shared, or an area within my constituency that is also shared by the member for Baines and Grantstown and the Minister of National Security, and that is the area surrounding the College of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, there have been concerns, increasing concerns of late, pertaining to the safety or lack thereof of the campus of the College of the Bahamas, and the degree of fear that exists among students of that college, particularly around the evening hours. And as we all know, the College of the Bahamas is an open campus whereby there's easy access into that campus from persons who are not students, persons from surrounding areas, whether close or not so close. And it is important that a government that has committed itself to doubling the investment in education recognize its mandate to significantly improve conditions and resources dedicated to the College of the Bahamas and the students that rely on those resources. Mr. Speaker, as many of us would know, including yourself, as you go abroad, particularly to study in the United States of America, it is commonplace. As a matter of fact, it is expected by the parents of those students that there will be a campus police department. Mr. Speaker, I wish today once again to challenge my government to find the means to invest the resources into the College of the Bahamas through the creation of a branch of the Royal Bahamas Police Force that will result in a dedicated Royal Bahamas Police Force station on the campus of the College of the Bahamas with police officers whose area of responsibility is solely that of the College of the Bahamas. It is not a good thing for parents, particularly parents of children coming from the family islands, to fear for the security of their children as they live alone in the surrounding communities and have to walk early in the morning and late at night to and from their classes. Yes. I believe this government was sincere when it said it would double the investment in education, Mr. Speaker. And I believe that we must, before the next election, have ample evidence of our commitment to just that. So, the leader of government business in this House and my mentor, I wish to work with him to ensure that using the resources that he has, and as the minister responsible for national security, that we make this a reality. so that those students at the College of the Bahamas who question today the commitment of this government to their welfare as students and future leaders of this country will find more reason to stand in support of this government. Mr. Speaker, pertaining to matters of finance in our country, the fact of the matter is, as I said when I last spoke in here, the government is constrained by conditions not of our own making. But we all recognize that we rely on, to a great extent, on the tourist arrivals into our country to support persons who own businesses that cater to tourists, to support people who work for those businesses that cater to tourists, to sell products, in few cases, made in the Bahamas to those tourists. Yet we find that, particularly following the Great Recession of 2008, those businesses, those jobs, and those Bahamian-made products have become increasingly threatened by the lack of growth in our tourism market. Mr. Speaker, an article in The Economist of October of 2013 said, and I quote, "Stimulus was not the main reason debt piled up," speaking about global economies. "The biggest drag on public finances came from lower tax receipts, thanks to weak profits and high unemployment." In our context, because we don't have corporate or income tax, I'd change that to read, "a poorly performing economy and high unemployment." Financial bailouts, it continued, added to the fiscal toll. I really believe, Mr. Speaker, that we have to at all times try to be as fair in our criticisms as we can. And if we wish to be fair, we would acknowledge, yes, that the prior administration did not, as we are attempting now to do, succeed in successfully managing our economy to the extent that we would have weathered the economic storm that began in 2008. We can concede that. But we can also concede the fact that we ourselves, successive governments, have not done nearly enough to improve the most important part of our economy, and that is our tourism market. You see, Mr. Speaker, and I know the member for Golden Gates can relate to this, because he is a man who comes from a family of cultural and music, or should I say a family that is steeped in the importance of culture and music. His father, the late King Eric Gibson, is a cultural and musical icon of our country. And I ask myself, Mr. Speaker, how have we as a country, how have leaders allowed the total destruction of our native music industry? Yes. We have a man who, in the name of Mr. Ronnie Butler, who sits at home immobilized today, who is such a musical genius. We intend, I believe, at some point to recognize him in a most meaningful way. But if we stay true to form, that will come after he passes on. You see, Mr. Speaker, we ask people to come to the Bahamas. We say it is better in the Bahamas. But what have we done to distinguish ourselves as a tourism destination? Where is the culture? Where is the emphasis on our cultural history? The emphasis on the music that we say we are proud of, but we don't do enough to invest in. And unless we recognize that we are under threat by our neighbors to the southeast and south of us, we are going to continue to take advantage of this notion that we will always make it in tourism because of our close proximity to the United States. We cannot rely on that, Mr. Speaker, because air transportation makes it easy for people to fly over us. And our neighbors have the good fortune of being able to compete with us on the basis of being a cheaper destination. Mr. Speaker, an article that was in the Guardian, today's Guardian, should give many Bahamians cause for alarm. Many Bahamians cause for alarm. Of the business section, today's Guardian. Oh, I see. Mr. Speaker, it is an article that references the Inter-American Development Bank's assessment of tourism in the Caribbean. It's an article by Ms. Allison Lowe under the headline, Cruise Passenger Spending Grows 850%. Mr. Speaker, the article says, in data compiled by the Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association in its February member update, the association found that cruise arrivals grew from 1.48 million in 2008 to 4.32 million in 2011, and up to 4.87 million in 2013. The report by the Inter-American Development Bank stated, and I quote from the article, the conditions and performance of the tourist industry in the Caribbean attributed the better performance of the Bahamas and Jamaica to their proximity to the USA originating ports for cruises, such as Miami and Fort Lauderdale. The report notes, however, that cruise passengers have a lower average per passenger expenditure of less than $100. A high-level cruise official has observed that some Caribbean countries are not doing enough to create and offer new products, attractions, events, and activities for passengers. In the Bahamas, the data on average passenger expenditure shows that cruise passenger spending fell from $77.90 in 2001 to $64.80 in 2012. However, while the average passenger spending fell, overall expenditure by cruise passengers entering the Bahamas rose from 40 million to 393.8 million in 2012. Obviously, if we're attracting 4.8 million today, as opposed to 1.4 million in 2008, you're going to generate more money on the basis of the $64 per person that they spend. A country that has a much cheaper quality of tourist. And you know, Mr. Speaker, in your own business, you don't offer a cheap service. And Saudi Lutra, I'll use the tactic that I wish to use. The fact of the matter is that if we have been marketing ourselves as a luxury tourist destination, it is antithetical to that model. It is contradictory to have ourselves marketing as a high-end tourist destination when we know that most of the tourists that we attract are not persons capable of affording that high-end tourism destination. So, as the member for Central and Grand Bahamas said, and I thought it was a poor example, with the greatest of respect, he wanted to say that the former administration spent so much money on dredging that we can now give credit to the former administration for all of these cruise visitors that we have coming to the Bahamas. 80% or 80 out of every 100. But that's flawed thinking, Mr. Speaker. And the reason it's flawed thinking is we are supposed to, as far as he's concerned, celebrate the fact that we have all of these cruise visitors who spend less, while the people who are going to go to the Atlantis and Bahamas, that number of persons is growing smaller and smaller and smaller. It makes no sense But the people, when they come, they want an authentic experience. And what are we doing, Mr. Speaker, to give them a feel and a taste of the Bahamas? Mr. Speaker, we talk about Bahamas opening in December of 2014, and about how many more rooms that's going to bring to the market. People who have questioned before are still questioning today. Do we have reason for optimism and confidence that we will be able to fill those rooms? Because it's got to be more, and I say this as the chairman for the gaming board, it's got to be more than just gaming. Because gaming, Mr. Speaker, and gaming and casinos are popping up all over the United States of America. As a matter of fact, where we say we will hope to attract tourists from, and that is mainland China, they can go as close as Macau. They can go soon in Japan. They can go to the Philippines. They can go to Australia. They can go to Singapore. They can go to many places far closer to the Bahamas that have many other attractions beyond gaming to be able to spend their hard-earned dollars. Yes. And when they think about the Caribbean, they think about music. Here, Junkanoo and the fellas on Bay Street, they say music.
Yeah. Say it again.
But when people think about the Caribbean, they think about Bob Marley. And the fact that the Jamaicans have been able to brand themselves in a way that emphasizes the cultural value of their destination. Mr. Speaker, I move now. So, to summarize that point, if we wish to improve our financial position, I believe that there will not be any difficulty in convincing the Bahamian public that success in that regard relies heavily on our ability to improve our attractiveness as a tourism destination. And I'm hopeful that in so doing, in trying to achieve that objective, we would emphasize the importance of our local talent in appealing to those tourists who want more, or who want an experience that emphasizes more about our culture and not just sun, sand, and sea.
Authentic.
Mr. Speaker, I wish now to talk about the WTO and the World Trade Organization that has been touted quite a lot recently by the member for Elizabeth. You see, Mr. Speaker, I say again, it is either illegal and closed to all, or legal and open to all. Another way, it's either illegal and illegal and closed to all, and I said it, I don't want to confuse myself. It's either legal and closed to all, or legal and open to all. But Mr. Speaker, there's been no conversation about the impact that a session to the World Trade Organization will have on our ability to regulate the gaming industry. You see, I would like for the member for Elizabeth to inform the Bahamian public how we will be impacted as it relates to gaming the minute we become members of the World Trade Organization. You say one has nothing to do with the other, but obviously there will have to be a services schedule that will be submitted to the WTO. My question is gaming being left off of that services offer?
Good question.
Is gaming going to be off of that services offer? Because if it is not, Mr. Speaker, or it's open, Oh, I'm happy you say it's open now. I'm happy you say that, Member for Elizabeth. That gaming is open now. The fact is, if gaming is on our services offer, we can do nothing to prevent foreign operators and service providers from participating in gaming.
The member yields. The chair recognizes the member for Elizabeth on a point of clarification.
No, I just don't want to avoid any confusion, Mr. Speaker. Because something is on a services offer for our accession on the WTO as open. For instance, the hotel industry is open, but that doesn't mean that anybody could come in carte blanche and establish a hotel. You still have the process of National Economic Council review, the regulator granting the appropriate license, fit and proper purpose, and if you have the capacity to allow more by a matter of policy, casinos to operate in your country. So just because it's a liberal services offering in our WTO accession does not mean it's an open door policy for all to come in. What that means is you can apply and be rejected, or apply and be granted. Just for some clarification, I wouldn't want, WTO matters are very confusing at times, and I just want to avoid the Bahamian public from being confused.
Thank you, honorable member. Member for Fort Charlotte, you may continue.
Thank you. I'm happy the member for Elizabeth has tried to elucidate that matter. Bring some clarity, because you see, for far too long, we have not done enough to discuss public policy matters in advance of implementing them. We have left the public out of the discussion to the detriment of the Bahamian people. You see, if we talk about a accession to the WTO, if there's no conversation about how that diminishes our power as a state to prevent persons from participating in a particular industry, it means then that we could potentially, if we continue to insist on depriving Bahamians from participating as owners in the industry, it means then we would probably be, member for Elizabeth, the only WTO member that has protectionist policies that discriminate against its own citizens. I wish to say, if the WTO is an organization that is geared towards removing trade barriers and getting rid of protectionism and getting rid of discrimination, it means then that, as the member for Elizabeth has said, that gaming services are on the schedule as being permissible and not prohibited. It means then that foreigners other than the Atlantis owners, the Bahamas owners, the Bimini Bay owners, it means that others can apply. And are you then telling me that's what they can do now? But I'm not arguing with you or disagreeing with you, you know, member.
Member.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, with the greatest respect, I apologize, sir. My point, Mr. Speaker, is that the argument that I make, sir, about opening gaming up, it's not because I do not recognize the dangers inherent in gaming. It is not because I am speaking because I have a benefit to gain, Mr. Speaker. But it is because I know that my responsibility as a leader like you, sir, elected by the people, is to inform them so that they understand that if we come in here to pass legislation soon that modernizes the gaming legislation, and if we accede to the WTO soon, then we will be saying that we are supportive of the idea of foreigners having rights in this country through our membership and through our legislation, membership in WTO that is, and legislation that we enact through this House. We will be denying Bahamians the right to do the same. And I think then it is quite ironic that we would stand to be the only WTO member that is raising or erecting barriers for participation of its own citizens. Or creating protectionism that discriminates against its own citizens, we would be the laughing stock of this world. Mr. Speaker, I wish to also send a message to those who have used the press to suggest that because their servers are outside of this country, that they are somehow immune to the, how should I say this, the regulation by the government and the authority that rests with the gaming board representing the legislature. Mr. Speaker, those who said that their servers are in Africa, that their servers are in Brazil, wherever they say their servers are, I wish to say to them that according to the Lotteries and Gaming Act, it says, Mr. Speaker, that any information pertaining to patrons of a gaming operation in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas must be found within this jurisdiction. Must be located here. But see, the press must do more research. Because what we're then saying is that the gaming board is to be disrespected. To say, yes, we may be conducting gaming, but our servers are outside of this jurisdiction when the statute, the regulations pertaining to that statute says that they must be here. And legal precedents from other common law jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, show that it is not the location of the server that matters, but the location of the player. So, if I am playing on an internet website that facilitates gaming and that server is in Africa, but that player is here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, legal rulings have found that it matters not where the server is, it's where the player is playing. So technically, if you are participating in gaming activities here in this country with an unlawful operator, you are breaking the law. Mr. Speaker, I will make a recommendation through the gaming board to the Minister of Tourism. My boss. Some persons like to remind me that he's my boss. I know that. I smile, you know. Now, I have two cards here, Mr. Speaker. I have two cards here. And yes, one is from a hotel and one is from a subway station, but I want to use them to make a point. I will propose to my colleagues of the gaming board, Mr. Miles LaRoda and Mrs. Tira Raming, that we make a proposal to the Minister of Tourism that we allow Bahamians, Mr. Speaker, to gamble at any casino in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas in an effort to generate additional revenue for the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and to support the functioning of the gaming board of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I will propose, because I do not believe that we should continue to live in a country where we give greater rights to those who visit us than we do those who were born here. I will propose that we charge Bahamians who wish to gamble in casinos $200 for daily entry. It's a lot, but the idea is we want to deter gaming. We want to deter it. Why? Because we do not want our people to become susceptible to the dangers of gaming. Mr. Speaker, and I take that seriously. I want gaming to generate as much revenue as it can. But I understand that as a person who is a representative of the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, that I also must look after their welfare. And I want to propose that we charge a daily entry fee for Bahamians, or those who are permanent residents and Bahamians who are able to afford it. I wish for them to pay $3,000 for an annual fee per casino. Because I do not believe, and let it be known, the government has every intention, or the private sector had every intention of recommending that permanent residents have the right to gamble in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. You know why? Because they have a lot of disposable income, high net worth individuals, and they wanted those people to gamble in their casinos. But how could we, as a part of this government, allow permanent residents to do something that Bahamians would not be allowed to do? So, Mr. Speaker, I am proposing that we allow those high net worth individuals to play. But I also want my Bahamian people who wish to have that same right to be able to do so as well. And it gives the government and the Treasury an opportunity to generate more revenue. $200 per day or $3,000 per casino for an annual card. So this white one could be for an entry fee, and the blue one could be for a daily entry fee, and the blue one could be for the high roller or the more affluent person. And we could help the member for Golden Isles and the Right Honourable member for Centerville to generate more monies to be able to service the obligations of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Now, there's no way, Mr. Speaker, that I would come in here championing a proposal that would give rights to the casino operators who are in all cases foreign and not encourage us to try and create similar opportunities for Bahamians. Mr. Speaker, Bahamians have to do in this country what we allow others to do. And if it is legal and open for all, it means they will be included. But the fact is, and this is something that people do not want to discuss, and rest assured, the Prime Minister is a man of judgment. The Prime Minister knows there are many considerations one has to consider before arriving at a decision. That's fine. That's fine. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. The thing that people don't like to discuss is, in a regulated environment that we really need, you cannot have a deviation from what the law currently provides for. And that is that there must be a probity test. Persons must prove themselves fit and proper to be casino operators. And what people don't want to discuss is it's possible that some persons who operate today, when investigated, may not be able to qualify for a license in a regulated environment. And for so long, there have been persons who have been happy to operate without scrutiny. Because the minute that you regulate it, you give up a lot of freedom. Freedom to operate outside of the view of the microscope. When we regulate web shops, some of the owners and potentially some of the employees may not qualify to receive a license to participate as an owner or an employee. Mr. Speaker, but if we do not regulate the industry, if we do not regulate the jurisdiction as it should, we've already heard from the governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas that we threaten, that we run the risk of being blacklisted. When you hear those kind of words coming from the central bank governor, that is as though it came from the prime minister of a country. A shot heard around the world. You know, they say when the prime minister speaks, he speaks ex cathedra. When he speaks, that's like gospel. Huh? That's like gospel. But when the governor of the central bank speaks, that's gospel. So explain it, and I'll tell you my part.
The member yields for clarification. The chair recognizes Southfield as well. Member for South, to repeat it again.
No, ex cathedra means heresy. When the prime minister speaks, it can't be heresy if it is gospel.
Very well. Thank you, honourable member. Member for Fort Charlotte.
Thank you.
Stay within the lines.
I will stay in the lines, and I dare the member for Central and South Eleuthera to tell me that the context in which I use that is wrong. Of course, I do not mean that he's speaking in an heretic manner. All right? But the fact of the matter is that he or she speaks with a degree of authority that his utterances or her utterances have to be taken far more seriously than if it came from someone who did not hold that position. So you say, but you're the learned man. I would look forward to you getting in that debate.
Stay within the lines.
Now,
the member yields. The chair recognizes the member for South Central Eleuthera.
The cathedra is the actual throne of the bishop, and a church gains the status of cathedral by virtue of the fact that his designated chair or throne is in that church. When one says ex cathedra, it means outside of the church. It is not within. An ex is, whenever you see the word ex, it means outside. Such as exit. I mean, what I'm saying is that is the only point that I was making. I just didn't want him to mislead young children listening to what he was saying.
Thank you. Thank you, honourable member. Member for Fort Charlotte, you may continue.
I think that it's only important that I made the explanation as for what I meant. I went out to lunch. I didn't have anything to drink. And I'm going to continue to make the point that I was making.
Andre.
Now, Mr. Speaker, the geography of gaming is very important. Because you see, the fact of the matter is that we cannot. No, I'm just saying I'm sober. That's all I'm saying. The fact of the matter is.
Stay off that point. Stay off that point. Stay focused on it.
The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, the geography of gaming is something that we have to take very seriously. Because we have a responsibility to the people we represent. We have a responsibility to them. And it's fine if I come in here and I espouse something. And I try to promote something which is the empowerment of Bahamians. But I have to also look at the flip side of what I'm promoting. And the fact of the matter is, I've always said, the record will reflect, there are dangers inherent in gaming, Mr. Speaker. And the fact of the matter is that the geography of gaming is something that all of the policymakers in this place must consider in any legislation that we promote. And we have to be concerned when we see web shops popping up all throughout our inner city communities and in our family island communities. And research has shown that casinos extricate or take out money from the communities where they are positioned. It stands to reason that we have web shops that, while they are an example of commerce, they are having an economic impact that is not in all cases favorable or beneficial to the communities in which they exist. Mr. Speaker, we have to have a well-regulated jurisdiction. If we have a policy, whether written or perceived, that causes gaming houses to open up wantonly anywhere, the question arises, how are we impacting the communities where they exist? Mr. Speaker, I don't have a problem with web shops existing because I know that we're talking about a Bahamian pastime. But what I do have a concern about is that we have so many of these places opening up that they are oppressing the people. Mr. Speaker, if we do not Mr. Speaker, a couple of things from from a foundation that was funded by John Templeton, no less. It's called Why Casinos Matter, 31 Evidence-Based Propositions from the Health and Social Sciences. It says in its introduction, and I quote, "From time to time in American history, a new institution takes root across the country, and in doing so changes the nation, changes the physical landscape of communities, impacts the patterns and habits of daily life, affects citizens and communities' economic outcomes, and in some cases even alters relationships between the governing and the governed, the more privileged and the less privileged. Consider the sudden emergence and rapid expansion of fast food chains in the mid-20th century. At one point, a fast food establishment coming to your town was a rare event. Only a few years later, it was commonplace. A major new institution had taken root across the nation, and the way we eat and the size of our waistlines changed as a result." Mr. Speaker, I have not wavered. I believe that we must regulate local gaming in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, but I believe we must do so in a smart way. We must rigidly regulate gaming to protect, to the degree that we are able to, our Bahamian people. And the reputation of the jurisdiction. This study, as one of its conclusions, found that living close to a casino increases the chance of becoming a problem gambler. It found, as one of its conclusions, that casinos extract wealth from communities. It found that casinos typically weaken nearby businesses. It found that regional casinos, which is a form of casino now, meaning that they're popping up all over the place, it found that they are a regressive source of revenue for states, meaning that states now are relying more and more on low-income casino patrons. The question is, the model for Atlantis versus the model for the web shops. Is Atlantis relying more on the high net worth player, which I submit it is, or are the web shops relying on the high net worth player? We have to look at this in a candid, objective way. If the web shops are relying on persons who do not have nearly the means to be able to lose their money when gaming, we have to recognize that is in association with this description of being a regressive form of intake. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that we have to recognize that in a regulated environment, we would do our people a good service by reducing the number of web shops per square mile. The more casinos you have, the more web shops you have rather per square mile, the greater the potential you have to harm the people you seek to represent. Mr. Speaker, you know, an interesting revelation in the same study says this. It says there appears to be at least one exception to the rule that casinos tend to weaken nearby businesses. Regional casinos do seem to promote the flourishing of nearby pawn shops, check cashing operations, and high-interest lending establishments such as payday lenders. We got a lot of cash for goals that have sprung up recently. You got a lot of payday lenders in New Providence of late. Okay? We as a country have failed ourselves because we have not empowered the College of the Bahamas to be able to do the kind of research to study the social consequences of our policies. So how do we not know that pawn shops, or in this context, cash for gold, how do we know that payday lenders, as they have increased in number, are not a direct result of the proliferation of web shops in our country? Mr. Speaker, on the topic of online gaming, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal dated February the 27th of 2013. The casinos here are asking for us to expedite the passage of the Modernization of Gaming Act. You know, New Jersey right now is a state that is struggling mightily. They have had 7 years of consecutive decline in gaming revenues. And there was a prediction that the introduction of online gaming in the state of New Jersey, which happened in November of last year, would significantly increase gaming revenues for the state of New Jersey. The Wall Street Journal article reads, and I quote, H2 Gambling Capital, which tracks online gambling markets, estimates that online gambling in New Jersey will generate revenue of $410 million the first year, growing to $590 million after a few years. New Jersey is the 11th most populous state in the United States of America. New Jersey has the distinction of being the most densely populated state in the United States of America, meaning they have more people per square mile in New Jersey than they do in any other state in the United States of America. They have 8.9 million people in the state of New Jersey, Mr. Speaker, and yet they predicted that in the first year following the introduction of online gaming, it would become a $410 million enterprise. So my question is, should we stand by as policymakers that know we need to increase revenue into our treasury and accept that web shops in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas are making, or that there are $400 million circulating in that enterprise on an annual basis? If in New Jersey they're predicted to have that much in game money played on an annual basis, the question we must ask are those numbers real? But we can't know that, because in an unregulated environment, you have no way of exercising the auditing functions that are done to be able to ascertain how much money is being played. There's no way for us to know whether or not that's a $400 billion enterprise Mr. Speaker. It may be much smaller, which means that we could potentially, as legislators, end up with egg on our faces if we predict and project to the Bahamian people that we will make all of these millions of dollars with the introduction of web shops post enactment, and then if it turns out that we make much less. So we must be careful, Mr. Speaker. It says, Mr. Speaker, in Bloomberg Business Week, even with the addition of online gaming, the state of New Jersey during the month of December 2013 brought in less money than they did in December 2012, Mr. Speaker, prior to the introduction of online gaming. And New Jersey is the biggest market for online gaming in the U.S. The 6-week tally from online gaming brought in $8.4 million, the article read, and it added $1.2 million to the state's coffers, as reported by Online Poker Report. They estimated that the first 6 weeks would result in revenue to the tune of $10.5 million, but they only collected $8.4. We must not rush to accept the numbers given to us by an industry we have not had the opportunity to properly vet, to know the kinds of monies that they are making. Mr. Speaker, I just want to say, I want to say this here because I don't want anybody to doubt it. I don't want anybody to doubt it. Mr. Speaker, I will always say, you were, sir, a mentor of mine when I first came home. You took me into your office when I was an 11th grade student at St. John's College. Sir, you, I owe a tremendous amount of gratitude to, and it is important for me to acknowledge that publicly.
Bring it on, brother.
Mr. Speaker, we may not always agree with each other. You may find fault with me often, but I respect you. Mr. Speaker, I never want it to be said, sir, by anyone, because you see, I got so much fire inside of me. Sometimes it's difficult for me to keep it all in. And so when people see my passion, they associate it with anger. They associate it with me being disrespectful. But one thing I am not, Mr. Speaker, is a pushover. And I've appreciated being in this business that I am in, that your skin must be like that of a crocodile. Because sometimes not just those on the opposite side, but those within your own organization will seek to take you down. But Mr. Speaker, I am today, and I say this without fear of contradiction, I am a member in good standing of the Progressive Liberal Party. I am a member and a supporter of the Progressive Liberal Party. And because I say what I say in the way that I say it, there are some who will question, has he left? No, Mr. Speaker, I have not left. And I still am led by the Right Honourable Member for Centerville. He is my leader.
Yes.
But I submit to you, Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
that my ability to speak my mind freely, my ability to stand as strong as I do,
Yes.
is enabled by a man who is a true Democrat.
Yes.
A man who, in understanding that he must facilitate opportunities for young people to flourish and to have a place in politics after he moves on, he understands that we must, Mr. Speaker, encourage free speech. But encouraging free speech comes with it responsibility, Mr. Speaker. And I never will predict, ever, because I believe in winning. I will never predict that because of making difficult decisions in this place, we run the risk of losing a general election. Mr. Speaker, I believe that this government will in fact turn this economy around and cause for there to be greater prosperity in our country before 2017. And no government should ever come into this place and be fearful of making decisions on the basis of how it feels it will impact it at the next general election. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we do so, we will be guilty of not governing in the best interest of the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. So no, I don't believe that we should be afraid of losing the next election. But I believe we must be progressive and live up to our name. We are, as Sir Lyndon Pinling said, the Progressive Liberal Party. And we must always be progressive. And the day we stop being progressive, we die. And we must fold up that so-called big tent. So if I am to be labeled as too progressive a member, I stand duly recognized and accused. But I didn't come here to just take it easy and allow myself to hope that somebody powerful would smile on me. My grandmother always told me, Mr. Speaker, Sylvia Demerit, Sylvia Rollins. What for you? For you.
You say?
Nobody can take that away from you. And Mr. Speaker, this man here on my right, the member for Bamboo Town, he and I have come a long way from those days that we sat in your office on Collins Avenue, devising along with B.J. Moss what would become the National Development Party. And we said, and I said, and I will hold myself accountable, I said that in moving to the Progressive Liberal Party, I would seek to translate NDP ideas through my membership in the Progressive Liberal Party into national policies.
Honourable members.
Mr. Speaker, it is in that vein, in living up to that commitment and that promise, that I would try to bring those progressive or democratic ideas into the Progressive Liberal Party. It is in that vein, Mr. Speaker, that in partnership with the member to my right, the member for Bamboo Town, who himself, like me, was a member of the National Development Party, we committed to deepening democracy. We said that we would bring about reforms to make this country stronger. And a failing of our government, successive governments, has been that we do not do a sufficiently good job in educating our public. We have rallies with big song and dance, but the substance is lacking. And we have some persons who will wax eloquent and say nothing at all. But you give them an opportunity to speak to the issues, and they cannot do it. And if in democracy to flourish, sir, we've got to talk about the ideas. There's a time and a place for song and dance. But then there's a time where you got to be all about the business. And so, Mr. Speaker, in asking my colleague, the member for Bamboo Town, to support our collective effort to stay true to the beliefs that we enunciated as members of a former party, we will bring to this House, after giving you sufficient notice, sir, we will bring to this House
members
a private member's bill calling for the establishment of a national debate commission. A national debate commission that will require the leaders of political parties to engage in pre-election debates to discuss the issues. Because, Mr. Speaker, there's no way, as the member for Southern Shore said today, there's no way that the leader of the opposition can come in here and say with a straight face that the FNM is not on the VAT train, when the member for Southern Shores can show evidence of an article quoting the former Minister of State for Finance that said that the FNM, if it would become government in 2012, if it would have become government in 2012, would have urgently implemented value-added tax. Yes. And then they come inside this place and say the FNM is not on the VAT train. It is absolutely disingenuous. It is absolutely unacceptable that you could try to fool the Bahamian people. They believed in VAT so much that they would implement it urgently. But they expect the Bahamian people to forget. They say they changed their minds. How convenient. The members of the press must have a vehicle to hold politicians accountable for their words. And for that to happen, the best vehicle and medium for that, sir, is for the leaders of the major political parties to be able to answer questions that they have not received in advance. To hear their ability in the cut and thrust of debate, to be able to articulate the ideas of the political party that they lead.
Speak to them about the debate, Elizabeth.
Mr. Speaker.
Members.
Mr. Speaker, we have politicians who very glibly will talk about castration for rapists and flogging of people in the public square. Demagoguery at its best. But how could you talk about flogging people with the cat o' nine tails? How could you talk about physical castration in 2014? We need to have reasoned debates. And you need to have a medium whereby you would determine the breadth and the depth of the persons who hold themselves out to lead you.
Speak about Elizabeth.
In Elizabeth, I say today, the reason that I was known, Mr. Speaker, as somebody even worthy of pursuing was because I participated in a debate. The member for Elizabeth participated in that debate as well. And I say today, without fear of contradiction, that the two votes that the deputy chairman of the Free National Movement lost by, he could have gained had he participated and had the courage to participate in that debate.
But the FNM don't believe.
But the Free National Movement did not believe enough in allowing their constituents
members
to participate in those kinds of democratic exercises. Make it clear. Make it clear. I am not suggesting that we have a debate commission with the resources to host debates constituency to constituency, but to have debates between those who offer themselves as leaders of the major political parties. And so, Mr. Speaker, we will do as we are required by the rule book and provide appropriate notice. And we are hopeful that we will have the support of the leader of government business and the leader of our party, as well as the leader of the opposition, to support that private members' bill that will allow for the creation of the National Debate Commission. Because never again must we allow ourselves to go to an election and not permit the Bahamian people to determine for themselves the viability of the policies being recommended by the major political parties that seek to receive their support. So, Mr. Speaker, I support the government and its excise and tariff amendment bills, and I support this government and its ability to govern this country. I am not wavering in my support, and I am hopeful that people do not see my presentation today as disrespectful, Mr. Speaker. I'm hopeful that they realize that I mean well, But if there are persons who have been offended, I don't apologize, because I feel it in my heart that it is the right thing to do and to say. And I proudly represent the people of Fort Charlotte. I thank them for their support, and I look forward to continue acting primarily for and on behalf of the people. I say that again, acting primarily for and on behalf of the people of Fort Charlotte. Thank you.